So you had First American, and they were providing real estate appraisal services to lending institutions, savings and loan associations and banks. So it had a subsidiary, ITKOWITZ. So ITKOWITZ is really the one in trouble here. So it was an appraisal management company that conducted business in New York. And it publicly advertised that its appraisals conformed with USPAP and that they were audited for compliance. So everything looked good. And then in around 2007, well, so they were working for WAMU, who was their biggest client. And I think it represented something like 40% of their business. And the allegation, of course, was that the appraisals were coming back higher than they really should have. I mean, in retrospect, this is all history, and it all seems very obvious, but at the time, I don't think anybody understood that this was where things were going. So in 2007, the AG initiated an action against ITKOWITZ under the executive law and the general business law, saying that ITKOWITZ engaged in fraudulent and deceptive acts in its conduct of business to the detriment of its customers and the public. And they also alleged that ITKOWITZ unjustly enriched themselves by receiving payment for independent, accurate, and legal appraisals, but failing to provide independent, accurate, and legal appraisals. So, so at this time, WAMU was the largest savings and loan, and I think I have it here. WAMU was ITKOWITZ's biggest customer, representing 30% of its business. So the allegation is that WAMU pressured ITKOWITZ to give these bad appraisals, and that ITKOWITZ did it. Okay, so I'm on page 11 now. So shortly after WAMU hired ITKOWITZ, WAMU's loan production personnel complained that ITKOWITZ staff and fee appraisers were not hitting value. And that it was appraising homes at too low a number to permit loans to close. So initially, there's evidence in the record that ITKOWITZ's management attempted to thwart any coercion by WAMU and push back a little, but, and I think, and this is going to come up later because I'm going to talk more about specifically fraud and how that affects appraisers. During 2006, WAMU starts to complain less and bring in higher appraisals. And at one point, there's an email chain or some kind of evidence they had that indicates that that ITKOWITZ's future business was contingent, expressly conditioned on ITKOWITZ giving high enough values on their appraisals. Okay. So as a result of all this pressure, the rest is history. So what is the defense that the appraisers put forward in this particular case that I'm putting in here today, and why do we care about it? So one of the arguments that the appraisers tried to make was, Attorney General of New York, you cannot come after us on this USPAP stuff and other violations because the law on appraisals has been preempted by the federal government. So what's preemption? Preemption means that the feds have made a law that is so comprehensive and that covers a topic so completely that the states are out. They federally preempted the states. So that comes out of the supremacy clause that vests in Congress the power to supersede not only state statutory or regulatory law, but common law as well. So how do you know that some law that the federal government has made has preempted state law and pulled it into the federal realm exclusively? It might expressly say that, or it could be by implication if the law is so completely dominated. But this is what the Court of Appeals ended up saying, and this is why I think this case that is 2000, it's 2011, but it's a big case, so I just thought I should put it in because it's important to the state's ability to do any of this. The state said, no, it's not preempted. We, the state, still have power to look at what appraisers are doing and to discipline them and to set standards for them. And why did they say that? Because it said that the way that the federal law was actually written, if you look at the actual, the actual text of the federal law, it says that it anticipates that the state is still going to be involved.
Specifically, the statute recognizes that the states are in the best, the report to the appraisal subcommittee in the Congress said that it recognized that the states are in the best administrative position to certify and license real estate appraisers and to supervise their activities, and permits the states to impose stricter appraisal standards as necessary. So this is the opposite of preemption. That this basically means that there's basically concurrent jurisdiction, that there's a federal agency that can act, but there's also a state agency that can act. Now, I think when I read this case, I don't know about you, if anybody here has read this case, but it's kind of really, it's in many ways a disgusting case. And why do I consider it a disgusting case? Here you have these appraisers. They're doing their job. They're giving an honest, straightforward appraisal. What does WAMU do? The people at WAMU say to these people, if you don't give us better values, higher values, so that we can essentially market these loans to Wall Street, we're going to fire you, we're going to replace you. So they're basically being blackmailed into violating their obligations as an appraiser to keep the work. And I don't know, but you know, Elizabeth Warren is a famous senator from Massachusetts, and she's one of her claims to fame is that the people on Wall Street escaped the financial crisis unscathed. The Attorney General, who does he go after? He goes after a victim. He goes after the appraisals. Instead of using these appraisers to go after the bank, what happened to the bank officials who were trying to jack up these appraisals and use their power to jack up these appraisals so that they could, what was really going on here? What was going on was that Wall Street was making a ton of money on securitizing loans by packaging all of these loans that everybody in the industry knew were never going to get paid from day one. A lot of these loans, they would issue a loan, they would sell. I can remember in 2007 looking at a 3-bedroom apartment on Washington Avenue in Brooklyn they were selling for $750,000, no down payment. No down payment. So what happened with those loans? What happened with those loans? They turned around, they issued the loans. A lot of these loans didn't get paid, not even one payment got paid on these loans, but they got put in a package. The banks got a tremendous commission from Wall Street for putting these loans together, and the investment bankers who put these securitizations together made millions. And the investment banks made millions. And what they do, they sold it to the Chinese and to the Japanese. And who winds up on the hook? The appraisers who are threatened with, who aren't going to go along with it. Yeah.
What's come out of this case, in my opinion, is that the pressure against the appraisers is much more subtle now. They don't come out and say, if you don't bring it in, we're not going to use you on the panel anymore. But what they do now is much more subtle. If you bring in 3 or 4 appraisals low in a row, that appraisal source dries up. You don't get any more appraisal from them. Nothing's ever said about it. but we are still under tremendous pressure to bring values in. And even if even if, which I don't, I bring it in whatever I think it's worth, that's what I bring it in for. And I had a company where I did 90 appraisals for them. I did three in a row in a low. I haven't received an appraisal from them in 6 months. I mean, it's much more subtle now. It's not like it used to be when they came out and said, if you don't bring this number in, but there still is no appraiser independence.
But when you walk in to a brownstone, or you walk in to a co-op, how do you know what the bank is quote unquote hoping to get? How do they communicate that?
You don't know specifically, but if you have a contract of sale, you know what the house sold for. And it's usually, it's not on a refinance, because it's on a sale. Like if you, example, the house was sold for 1.5 million, I brought it in for less than 1.5 million. Guess what? Nobody gets paid. So the mortgage broker is now gonna put pressure on the appraisal management company, don't use this guy again. And the appraisal management company is not going to turn around and say, I have to use him, because they don't want to lose the client. The only thing all of this did was shift. When I was doing it directly and I was just dealing with my mortgage brokers, I told them I can't bring the number in, okay? Or I could bring that, or whatever. Now it's much more subtle. And we are still under exactly the same pressure, and the difference is we're making half the money we used to make before. It's the whole system stinks.
That was also one of the reasons why you notice over the last year or two, a lot of your major money-centered banks paid huge fines to the federal government, Justice Department. The quid pro quo was, you leave our compensation from those years alone, you don't touch any of the executives in the bank, and like Chase, we'll pay you $13 billion for you to do that. They bought their way out of it.
The ironic part here is that before there was e-appraiser, and WAMO used to order the appraisals directly from the appraiser and exert influence on the appraiser to make numbers. Obviously the federal government passed laws regulating that and introduced AMCs, appraisal management companies, to insulate, yes, e-appraiser is a management company, to insulate the appraiser from undue pressure to make numbers. And here, e-appraiser was influenced by WAMU, and they in turn influenced the appraisers anyway to make those numbers. And you're absolutely right. There it was much more blatant, and you were pretty much told, I mean, we knew when we did work for e-appraiser.
They were like, this is the number, you gotta bring it in.
Right, yeah. When WAMU changed and started using e-appraiser, because we were with WAMU for years and did very high volume with them, once the appraiser took over and then they started pressuring us directly, we stopped working, we stopped taking any work from them. And then that obviously led to the demise of WAMU. And I don't know if e-appraiser is still in business. Anybody know? I think they went down also. But the premise of having an AMC insulating appraisers, it really does not work, and it takes money from appraisers' pockets. The only difference I see today is maybe because I do hardly any work for AMCs, but the work that I do, they don't bother me for numbers because they know I'm not going to listen to it.
Let me ask you this.
The point I'm trying to make is if you bring in, especially on sales, if you bring in a number low because you know the house isn't worth it, and this past year, you know, the sellers thought the numbers were going up when they weren't really going up. They are just not going to give you appraisals, and you can't call them up and say, how come I'm not getting any appraisals?
No,
I just did 90 for you in the last year, and now I'm getting nothing.
But that also happens on refinances too, because we're asked to give a fee quote on the refi, and they have the management company will have a schedule. If the value is between X and Y, we'll pay this much for the appraisal. If it's between Y and Z, we'll pay this much for the appraisal. And I'll say, you know, according to your schedule, what's the fee? Well, we think it's worth $1.5 million, so the fee is $750.
Good luck with that. Isn't that?
And if no, it's not, because the client can base their fees on the value, the appraiser can't. That's the loophole. Yes, I checked it out.
But that's what they're going to pay you.
Yes, yes.
So they are
yes.
indirectly applying that to your compensation.
They're allowed to. I checked it out. I checked it out. They can base their fees on value. We can't. So by my accepting that appraisal, that appraisal assignment, and then I appraise it for $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 less, they're not going to call me again. So I tell them up front, I'm not guaranteed the fee. I don't guarantee the value. Your fee to me may be contingent on your value that you need, but I have to ignore that. If you want to call someone else, call someone else. Yes, question?
So what do you think about what Jay said about the appraisers are the victims here?
No question with it, because
I'm sure you'll have 65
No, I saw a
people
look,
agreeing.
I just saw a look on your face though.
This is really, listen, this is one of the, not to get political, but there are a lot of people who think.
You can't help yourself.
I can't help myself. I mean, look, I supported our president, I'll say that, but there are a lot of people who feel very wounded by the fact that the Obama administration, the SEC, did not seek any criminal indictments against any high-level banking
You just
people.
explained the.
They bought their way.
And I understand that, yeah, but
Well,
so
it was bought
what?
by
Yeah, but people who commit economic crimes are not supposed to be able to buy themselves out of jail.
There's always a number.
Wait, one
Yeah.
more comment.
the appraisers are the least organized, and we have the least money, so they're gonna step all over us.
And no leverage.
And no leverage, exactly. So, we are the downtrodden, and they are really stomping all over us. And none of this, in my opinion, there were some bad appraisers out there, but for the average guy that's sitting in this room, we were all out there doing the right thing. And we are the ones who took the brunt of all of this. Mortgage brokers and appraisers got killed for this, but it was the government that created these 106% loans and all this other stuff that allowed that greed to take hold. And those mortgage brokers were making $40,000, $50,000 commission on a loan, and we're getting paid a lousy $300.
But then
So
they
the
also went
greed
back,
was-
the
the greed was
AMCs
there for
were
them.
busy ordering retrospective
Excuse me?
appraisals.
Excuse me? The what?
The AMCs
Like a
were hired
e-appraisal.
by the banks to do retrospective appraisals. Now, you go back 5 years and look at this appraisal, and was it worth this 5 years ago? Because now they're trying to, in addition to making the bad loans, to really solidify the case against the appraisers, who 5 years later, it looks like they overvalued it. Did anybody know what was gonna happen on that day, in 2007, 2008, when the world came to an end for a couple of hours? So they, it's, the system stinks. But we sit here and, we have our representatives and our lobbyists, and everybody pats you on the head and sends you on your way.
Well,
It's like
when
the
you-
whole thing with the UAD. We went to a class to learn how to do the UAD, and the two people teaching the class at the Appraisal Institute are now on camera every month for ACI, and they were there to sell software. I mean, the whole thing is so convoluted. It's really
But under the law, I mean, in his circumstance,
Speak up.
he can't initiate, legally, it would cost him a fortune to go after this AMC saying that they infringed on his independence. But can he do something administratively by going to the Attorney General and just pointing out, saying, hey, I've done 90 cases, been on that panel, now they stop, I think there's a pattern, you should investigate, and it's really the pressure that this organization should place on the attorney. Look, it's happening again, and they should go into this AMC. Let me see who you ordered from, why you ordered, why did you stop in this case? Are there other appraisers that come in low, that killed the deals, and you're doing the same thing? Now you're just shopping for another appraiser. You kill them. And it gets known in the community, and there are people who don't care. They're going to know, well, this is the purchase price, you got to come close to it.
This is a Dominic question.
But
It's
it
a
doesn't
you question.
cost anything from our perspective to tell, well, but how much time? I mean, you could write something up like that in 20 minutes. And if the Attorney General,
Then you get blacklisted, then you never get work. It's not worth it.
you could do it anonymously, too.
Well, you can have an organization that does work, that can lobby on behalf of
The appraisers.
appraisers
The one we have.
without, right. So I'm not saying, look.
We don't
look,
have one.
This is, this is it's extremely difficult to effect this kind of change. You have to be very highly
But
organized.
what's the alternative?
And you have to be very dedicated, and people have to commit time and money to the effort. Yeah.
With the new rules on the collateral underwriting, they expect appraisers to be more conservative. They expect us to use comps that are closer. They expect us to use sales that are lower. This is gonna cause a problem throughout the whole industry because we're not gonna be able, when we get a contract, we're not gonna be able to bring that house in. Because if we do, they're gonna kick the appraisal and say it's too risky. I mean, the whole system is absolutely, totally screwed up.
Well, I would say this, from what I understand about the way appraisals work, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a particular piece of real estate that's unique in some respect, so that somebody has to actually use judgment and not just comps,
They don't want that.
forget about it.
They don't want it anymore. They don't want us making judgment. They want this to be a round hole and a round peg and a square peg. They do not want us using judgment. That's all about the rating systems, the C1, the C2, the C3, C4, the Q1, Q2. That's all, they want it uniform. The days of being independent and saying, okay, I happen to like this style, and it's going on. And they're gonna force us to be more conservative by rating these appraisals based on risk. High-risk appraisals will get kicked. You get so many appraisals kicked, you don't have a license anymore. So they want us to be more conservative with the values that we bring in, and they want us to use more recent sales, closer sales, whether they're applicable or not. Because if they say, if I go 2 miles to find a comp that's actually a better comp, they could judge that comp as being more risky.
Who's the they?
The collateral underwriting, the program that is now out, that every appraisal gets submitted to. Every appraisal.
Fannie Mae appraisal.
Yes.
Fannie Mae, yes.
I have a question for you after, but first this one.
What this gentleman is speaking of is that Fannie Mae used to use the collateral underwriting tool. Now, everyone will be able to use it, all of the underwriters. But
We don't have the-
not only is what he's saying true, when you do get red flags, you will have no one to complain to, no one to say, hey, you know, how do I get this red flag erased, or say this isn't right. You know, if you use a comp 5 years ago and you judge it average and you say it's above average now, they'll question that and red flag you for that. Well, maybe it was renovated, you know, but you don't have a chance to even defend yourself.
No chance.
There's no board. There's no,
So let me ask you this.
nothing.
When you bring 3 out of 90 in low and they move it, my question would be this. Who do they move it to?
We're gonna bring in the guys who maybe, who
So-
maybe in the past.
But that's,
In the past has been more generous with their appraisal. Look, I understand that if you're too generous, it's gonna, down the road, it's gonna wind up in a lawsuit.
but you see where I'm going with this. I mean, if everybody held the line like you do, there'd be no place for it to go.
That's not gonna happen. There are people out there working for $150 an appraisal, they don't care.
Wait. There was hands up here. Okay. This is good.
If you just look at what happened with Countrywide, who wanted to make loans, was having a problem with appraisers, they created their own AMC. And basically, they didn't say to them on paper, you have to bring in the loans. But they basically made it clear. If you worked for their AMC and you didn't bring in the loans, in the old days, they would say, look, I can't use you anymore. Now, what they do is they just don't give you work. And if you say, how come I'm not getting any more work? They'll say, well, you know, I'll give you an excuse.
We're slow, we don't have any.
You know, we're slow. We decided to try some more people.
And I talked to her and say, I just got 6 appraisals from them.
They moved that work to another appraiser, he kills 3 in a row, then they go to the next one.
Sorry, John.
You wanted to take the break now, or this is
No more questions? Any questions?
Do you have any final comments on this? Because this is your baby. No, but I mean, what really is the solution, though? If you're gonna move it to the next guy, who's gonna, I mean, but what's to stop the next guy from coming in at the appropriate number as well?
Nothing, because.
But how can it be the
everybody in
same
this
thing?
room could go out and do an appraisal on the same property, and we could have 100 different values.
But how can it be the same thing at once, that the standards are getting tighter, but then they're going to kick it away from you if you don't give them what they want? So it's kind of, it's just a roulette wheel?
I do review appraisals, and the quality of the work out there in general is not good. So if you have a guy out there
That's the
doing
answer I was-
appraisals for $150, you think he cares? He just wants to churn numbers. The fact that we can't even determine our own prices.
But
My
then he's the
quality-
next
The
WAMO.
quality of my work should determine what my fee is, not some AMC. This usual and customary fees is killing the business.
Yeah, also, as we all know, the complication now is with the automatic underwriting review on the Fannie Mae side, we have no recourse. In other words, if an appraiser is put on a blacklist on Fannie Mae side, there is no appeal, no recourse. They can lose. They're not going to lose their license, but they'll basically lose their income, because once he's on a blacklist from Fannie Mae, that gets circulated to all the lenders in the whole country.
And we're not privy to the information.
And we're not privy to the information. There's no due process. There's no anything. You're on the blacklist. You're done. Find something else to do for a living.
And the natural question.
Wait a second, wait a second, wait a second.
wait.
The natural question would be, why can't we as appraisers view that website and do our own review against the Fannie Mae database? But the rationale is, we're not their customer, the banks are their customer, so they owe us nothing. Because it would be very good if we were able to get into the database and review our appraisal against the Fannie Mae database to see what errors existed. At that point, we could explain in the report why these problems existed, why we were different from year to year, that it was improved.
You'd have greater uniformity.
But right now, nothing.
I'm not understanding why appraisal organization, organized appraisal organizations can't initiate a dialogue with the appropriate entities or agencies.
Dialogue.
The function of the major appraisal organizations are education.
It's not a lobbying
intervention,
organization.
not lobbying, not intervention, not changing
Well,
laws.
Dominic, we, the Columbia Society, we're a member of the Appraisal Foundation, a sponsor of the Appraisal Foundation. For the last year, we've been working on a white paper that addresses these issues.
You mentioned that at the other.
Yeah, we have, I was going to discuss this later, but we have 4
You
people.
wanna?
Excuse, can we have quiet in the back, please? I'm sorry. Everybody can contribute when they're chosen.
We have 4 of the sponsors that are willing to sign off now, and we have 3 that have brought it to their respective boards, and they're willing to sign. Hopefully, within the next 2 to 3 months, we're going to have this signed, and it's going to be presented to Congress, both houses of Congress.
We have a question here.
No, there is a data source for collateral underwriting for your, to getting your GLA and everything. And I had signed up for that. And I tried it out the first 3 days that we started. And I got a bill in 3 days for, I think it was $368 for that information. Where I'm getting $150 as a split fee appraisal. I'm saying, wait a minute, I'm actually losing money right on an appraisal. How did this work? It's $6 per search they were charging. For
Fannie Mae charged?
Fannie Mae, for the same exact information that the banks receive, they want to give you, it costs you $6 for every single search that you do.
Wow. Wow.
It would seem to me that you ought to be able to get it for professional courtesy.
You would think.
Well, it would be much better appraisals in the
That's
end.
right, that's right.
And isn't that what they want?
No, I don't think they do.
I don't think they do.
The information.
I think they want to put us out of business. but
Bill, you had a question in the back?
I was just gonna say, one of the ironies of it is that Fannie Mae tells us as appraisers, we're obligated to use all available data. And a few appraisal organizations sent them a petition saying, well, then you gotta give us access to collateral underwriting because that's available data.
And they don't.
So it's kind of like, in order to do our job, you're holding back from us. and
It's
you're
almost like they're
forcing us
setting
not
up
to be
a
able to do
stand.
it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a
Oh, wait,
potential
listen
lawsuit.
to his comment. He says it's almost like they're setting them up.
They're setting up the appraisers for failure, they really are. Because, you know, and I don't care, and everybody in this room who's been doing appraisals for a number of years knows that we can all look at the same property and see it completely different. You know, there's no one guy, there's no way in this room that everybody's gonna see the same property. I would never buy a house with a pool. because it's expensive, your taxes are higher. The next guy I can't swim, so but the next guy that can swim would say that house is worth 20,000 more because it has a pool. That's human nature. So, you know, but it's not what you're supposed to be doing, but it does influence the way you think. You know, location. I have a friend who has a house on a golf course. I'm a golfer, that's perfect. You know, he's got a hole in the fence, he goes out.
And then we got, okay, Jay,
Attention, please.
one comment and then break.
Hey, the litigator in me says you want to be able to have access to collateral sources.
There's one more comment.
One more in the back. Yes, go ahead.
I just get the feeling, to be honest with you, they just want to eliminate our career altogether. They want to make everything a computer model.
And a drone.
Why have appraisers at all?
Well, the further proof of that is how difficult it is now to get an assistant license, especially in New York State, and to pass the federal exam for certified general, certified residential. They are extraordinarily difficult. The failure rate is, I'm not sure if it's 40 or 50% for general certification. So, and there are no real effective training courses to help someone pass those. All right, last comment, then we're going to break. Go ahead.
Don't you think that the test should have been more difficult all along?
Yes,
Okay, then we wouldn't be in this mess right now. Make it as hard as a CPA.
but also make it practical.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't care how they do things in Missouri. I work in New York City.